All right, good morning, everybody. This meeting is now called to order. Ms. Gaynor will introduce our visitors.
Good morning. As usual, I'll start over here with Barry Maka in his usual chair. General Counsel, Lee Kibbles is Director of Internal Audit. Chris Stovall is our Controller. Vice President Tony Vidmar. In the back corner is Dr. David Carlston, who is Chair of the Faculty Senate. Provost Betty Stewart, Vice President Keith Coleman. We have with us Sarita Green, who is the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Multicultural Affairs. Matthew Clark, Associate Vice President and Dean of Students. Angie Ray, who's Chair of the Staff Senate. Lana Sweeten-Schultz, who's a reporter for the Times Record News. Charles Frazier and Shayla Owen with the Student Government Association. And Cindy Ashlock, Executive Assistant to the President.
Dr. Lamb will now make special introductions. So Dr. Lamb.
So, good morning. Oh, I have to come down here because this is broadcast and there are microphones. Yeah, so people are watching. Would like to introduce Dr. Sarita Green. Sarita is our first Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Multicultural Affairs. She comes to us from Los Angeles. Was most recently with the Harbor Institute and with the University of Southern California for many years prior to that. And so we are absolutely thrilled to have her here. She's going to be outstanding.
Welcome.
Dr. Green, welcome to Midwestern, and we look forward to working with you. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for your participation in our committee meeting yesterday. Just as a reminder, we are speaking live, so please make sure your cell phones are silenced or turned off. We provide an opportunity for public comment concerning agenda items at the beginning of each meeting. It appears no one has signed up to speak. Before we move on, I do have something to say just publicly before we go too much further. I wanted to personally go on the record and thank Sean Hessing. Sean has done a phenomenal job for this university and for this board. He stayed on long after he needed to benefit us, helped us procure our fantastic president. So I just wanted to publicly thank Sean for doing that for this board. So item 17-39 is the approval of the minutes of the August 4th and 5th meetings of the board. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved as presented. We'll now move on to the consent agendas. The executive committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Items presented for committee approval only, 17-05, the committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 17-06, the Gunn College Health of Sciences and Human Services Building Design Review. 17-07, the MSU Deferred Maintenance Reports and Campus Condition Index. 17-08, Campus Construction Update. 17-09, Dallas-Fort Worth Expansion Update. And 17-10, Campus Land Facility Services Relocation Alternatives. Items approved by committee and placed on consent agenda. 17-11, the Gunn College of Health Sciences and Human Services Landscaping and Parking Project Authorization Request. Authorize the administration to proceed with the $1.1 million project for parking and landscaping near the new building as presented. 17-12, the Central Campus Sidewalks Project. Authorize the president to finalize a contract for this project at a value not to exceed $575,000. 17-13, Wichita Falls Museum of Art at MSU, Code of Ethics and Emergency Response and Disaster Preparedness Plan. Ratify the documents as presented. 17-14, Wichita Falls Museum ratification of de-essentialed artworks. Ratify the de-essentialed items as presented. I recommend approval of this consent agenda as presented. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Gibbons, please present the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. One item was presented for committee approval only, and that was 17-15, the committee minutes. The following items were presented for information only in committee. 17-16, the faculty report. 17-17, the staff report. 17-18, student government report. 17-19, athletics report. 17-20, enrollment report for the fall of 2016. 17-21, financial aid profile. 17-22, MSU strategic plan update. The committee had one item that we would like to place on the consent agenda today, 17-23, the December 2016 graduating class. We did approve the list of candidates for graduation as presented. Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of this consent agenda item as presented.
Would anyone like to remove this item from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Gregg, please present the finance committee report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met yesterday. Our report is as follows. We have one item presented for committee approval only, the minutes of the last meeting. Items presented for information only were 17-25, summaries of financial support, 17-26, fiscal year 16 quasi-endowment fund reports, and 17-27, Fair Labor Standards Act changes. There were items approved by the committee and placed on the consent agenda. 17-28, the monthly financial report for July 16. 17-29, the fourth quarter 2016 investment report. Those are both accepted. 17-30, we ratified the changes as presented to the personnel reports and the changes in the fiscal year 16 budget. 17-31, we did likewise to the fiscal year 17 budget. And 17-32, gearing up for a comprehensive campaign new position, we authorized a new associate vice president position to be paid from private funds as presented. Chairman Sanchez, I recommend approval of these consent agenda items as presented.
Would anyone like to move items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Birch, please present the audit, compliance, and management review committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit, Compliance, and Management Review Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only, 17-33, committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 17-34, Committee for Presidential Performance and Compensation Review. 17-35, Historically Underutilized Business Year-End Report, Fiscal Year 2016. 17-36, Compliance Activities Update. Items approved for committee and placed on consent agenda, 17-37, Audit Activities and Fiscal Year 16 Internal Audit Annual Report. Approved the Fiscal Year 16 Internal Audit Annual Report as presented. 17-38, Audit Report 16-1, Information Security Program Assessment. Approved a statement indicating that the Board of Regents views information security as one of the top priorities for the university, and approved authorizing the President and Cabinet to ensure the implementation of all of the recommendations included in the Information Security Program Assessment are a priority for the university. Chairman Sanchez, I recommend approval of these consent agenda items as presented.
Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 17-40 is the President's report and discussion of higher education issues. Dr. Shipley.
Thank you. Before I begin my short report, I'd like to turn a few remarks time over to Dr. Betty Stewart, who has, I know, but can you do your thing anyway? Okay. Who has breaking news to share with us. And when I finish, if our student that she'd like to introduce has arrived, we'll break back in and introduce the student. But she's going to fill us in on the information.
Please indulge me this morning. I am so excited to announce to the board that thanks to the efforts of Dr. Shipley and Dr. Sweat, Midwestern has received a scholarship for one of our sophomore students at $25,000 a year for 3 years. And this scholarship comes from the George and Faye Young Foundation of Dallas. We are so excited because this is the largest annual scholarship that any student at the university will have ever received in the history of Midwestern State University. The criteria for this scholarship is that the student had to be a sophomore who had completed at least 24 credits at Midwestern, enrolled as a full-time student, demonstrated a financial need. 3.0, fantastic.
Come on in.
Here she comes. They had at least a 3.0 grade point average, and they had to have majored in one of these areas: education, healthcare, science, or the environment, social work, social services, or business. I had a team of deans, a committee of deans who worked with me to find our recipients. We collected information, and we found that we had 70 students who were eligible for this award. And after the dean and I met and we looked at all the criteria, we narrowed it down from 70 to 28. And then of those 28, we invited 3 in for interviews. Carolyn was one of the 3 who came in for an interview, and she just really blew the socks off of us in her interview process. I would like to tell you a little bit about Carolyn. She is a sophomore education major, and she attended Irma Rangel High School in Dallas, Texas, where she was involved in Leaders for Readers program. And through this program, she served as a reading tutor at a local learning center. Additionally, she helped to organize and contribute to major school functions, such as the Women's Month and Red Ribbon Week. She also participated in the League of United Latin American Citizens and served extensively in her local church community where she was able to assist in teaching young students on weekends. The thing that impressed us about Carolyn is we asked her about what do you want to do and why did you choose education as your major? And Carolyn told us, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, she said, I want to teach 3rd and 4th grade students because I want to let them know that they can change, and this can change their lives the way that it has changed my life. So I wanted to tell you that this $25,000 scholarship, we set the stipulations on how it could be spent. So this is how Carolyn is expected to spend the money. She's going to use this money to cover education-related expenses only. No new cars. Such as tuition, books, room and board, summer school, or any education-related experiences. She will have to enroll in a minimum of 15 hours each fall and spring semester, live in a residence hall while attending, participate in a study abroad experience in either London, Spain, or France, and the scholarship will cover the cost, so it's not going to cost her anything. Maintain a cumulative GPA of 3.5 or better, and then do some service for the university. This scholarship is only given to 5 universities in the state of Texas. 4 of those are private universities. Midwestern is the only public university. The other 4 schools are Trinity, St. Edward's, Schreiner, Austin College, and Midwestern. So we are just so thrilled to have this opportunity. And I'd like Carolyn just to say a few words to the board about what this transformational gift will mean to her.
Well, I shared earlier that my first 2 interviews, or the first interview, because the second one was the surprise announcement. Well, the first interview I shared that I come from a family that didn't know college or hadn't gone to college, and I feel like this scholarship is finally that reward for all of my hard work that I've been trying to put in since I was a little girl. And it just means a lot. You know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've worked so hard just to get even to college, just to be here, and the fact that I'm in front of all of you is amazing. I never imagined that I'd be given this opportunity. And finally, I can do something with this scholarship that will help me further in my education and help me gain new experiences, and it'll be able to help me help the other children.
So I want to lighten this up a little bit. I said, Carolyn, why did you choose Midwestern? She said, well, I told my counselor I wanted to be a teacher, and my counselor said, I know the school you need to go to, Midwestern. And so she said she and her family visited Midwestern, and I said, well, what did you like about Midwestern? She said, oh, I love the nature here. There were trees, and there was even water.
Well, I come from Dallas, so all I see is, the skyscrapers and the automobiles everywhere. I'm not exposed to a lot of nature. It's so beautiful.
We are just so thrilled. Thank you all for giving us this time to introduce and for you all to meet Carolyn. She was a delight for the committee. As you can see, she's overwhelmed by this opportunity. And but it's just wonderful, and we really want I forgot to say this, that the reason why we are receiving this award is because a resident of Midwestern has been a long-serving member of the George and Faye Foundation Board, and he's ready to retire. And rather than take a gold watch as a retirement gift, he said he wanted to give Midwestern a scholarship. And this is the scholarship that we are receiving. So we are just so excited. And
You want to share his name so they know?
Ripley. Where's Richard Ripley? Yes. Richard Ripley. He goes by Dick Ripley from Wichita Falls.
And he came and met with us.
Yes. So thank you all.
Yay! It's quite all right. You deserve it. That's just a wonderful tribute to the type of students that we educate here and the quality of education we provide. We had a fairly rigorous interview by the foundation, and I would like to thank Regents Web for sending them our way. We would welcome several more foundation visits if you think of any. I want to just take a moment to update you. Accrediting bodies and governing groups of American higher education often have advisory groups of presidents. And I've been on the advisory group for the Association of Governing Boards, which is the American group that helps all of you learn how to be board members. And so I've been, for the past 3 or 4 years, going to a meeting every fall to advise them on breaking issues, and then they advise this group of about 20 presidents on what they see as the breaking issues. They're going to be meeting in Dallas this year, and I'm going to be encouraging you to try to take advantage of their meeting. I'll tell you more about that later. It's in April. But I thought you needed to know what they listed as the emerging issues, and the topic of the 2-day meeting was uncertainty in higher education and risk. And they publish papers and create materials primarily for board members to help you be aware of those things that could be of danger to universities and the things over which you should have most oversight and how you might exercise that oversight. And the first area, I shared the higher education business model with you because I think the thing presidents across the country are concerned about most is the changing nature of the higher education business model. And the reason it's changing is that revenues are disappearing, and the ways to find new money for our budgets are disappearing. And there's several factors that are making that happen. If you're a public university, it's the diminishing state support. If you're any university, it's that we've hit the ceiling on tuition. So the way we used to generate new revenue every year is we'd raise tuition a little or a lot, and that has really reached a ceiling where we're not sure what role increases in tuition will play in our future. We used to have more federal support. That may likely diminish even further in the next few years. And so what we're scrambling to do is to figure out what areas are available to produce revenues because our costs continue to go up. We face inflation higher than regular inflation, and so we struggle to deliver a quality product to our students And so you'll hear us talk more about how we create new revenues. The DFW outreach is a perfect example because you should be diversifying your educational outreach. Online is one area. Use of summer facilities in summer is a good way to talk about revenue, and then there are many other ways to generate revenue. So we're going to have that in front and center. One of the reasons that we're struggling to be able to manage our budgets is the intensely increased regulatory environment. You can see by the way we are dealing with compliance, the way we're having to staff up in every area around compliance. Is it IT? Is it overall compliance? The amount of time we spend on compliance and the regulations coming forward around compliance, it is a very tough environment for us right now. And we're under intense scrutiny, whether it's Title IX, whether it's athletics, we're just under a microscope. And so a lot of the conversation was about how you begin to bear the expense of this regulatory environment and where you make your choices first. The president of this group is a president of the University of Virginia, and she mentioned that merely since the incidents they had around student safety, that was a university where a young woman was walking downtown at night and was abducted and killed. They have just put millions into student safety. They have cameras downtown, they have shuttles, they have intrusive education on campus. So anything can happen on any campus, and you may need to stop everything and do it all differently. So regulation is of great concern. It was about a month before the election, and so we had pundits from the Beltway telling us who was going to win, and believe it or not, they were wrong. And so they were a bit concerned that it might be a transition of power moment where we had some unrest on campuses and elsewhere. I think now what's emerging in the higher ed media is wondering how our regulatory environment will change and what it will mean primarily for students who face immigration challenges, either through their parents or you saw after 9/11, a lot of graduate programs were deeply affected by how hard it was to get into the United States. So you could see an exodus of graduate students, international students, or some changes there. We talked about campus climate, and that's where student safety came in, but we talked a lot about campus unrest and protest, and how protest really needs to be the last form of student dissent, the last avenue for students to communicate, and you need to build avenues for dialogue and communication so you don't get to unrest, and that the presidents need to be out in front of that. They need to be speaking with student groups. They need to be asking about concerns. They need to be aware of emerging issues. So student unrest, campus climate, social media, how you work with social media where nothing's private anymore, and what that has to do with student and campus climate. And last of all, we spent the afternoon on campus athletics and what athletics means for image and how you shape an athletics program that is a positive impact on your image. We talked about graduation rates, retention rates. We talked about what's the right benchmark to seek on coaches' salaries, on scholarships for athletics, on facilities for athletics, so that you balance your academic requirements and the role athletics played. There were a lot of Division I presidents at the table, or presidents of flagship institutions, who just said the amount of revenue they receive from athletics in these big conferences eclipses any other way that they can make money, and that is a benefit and a challenge. And so managing something that's bigger than you and getting bigger than the university is a major issue for our future. So I just wanted you to know that we are not alone when we talk about the challenges we face, that I am listening to national leaders and bringing those ideas back to campus. And it's an exciting time to be in higher ed, but it is a turbulent time. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody have questions for Dr. Shipley?
I might ask one on that last topic, Dr. Shipley, and get your opinion. You're not the AD, I realize that, but Sam and I had this discussion last night, and I'm just curious as to your take. Mm-hmm. Sam is pretty concerned about the future of the Lone Star Conference. I'm with the addition of I guess what's now 2 new schools. I'm less concerned. I think that kind of stabilizes things, but I'm curious as to your take on that. Now that you've been here a year or so.
Where I came from, we actually abolished our conference and started over. And the conference we built is now called the Mountain East Conference, and it looks a lot like the Lone Star Conference is heading to look. And that's a conference that is a football-only conference, which means that you are not invited to be a member of the conference unless you can afford to have football as a sport. And we did that because in our area, it meant that if you had football, you could cover all the other sports. What Sam and I talked about also is that is not true for the Lone Star Conference. So our greatest liability is that the Lone Star Conference does football first, and then it might do soccer, and it might do tennis, and it might do golf, and we really need a conference that can host a competitive level in all the sports. And we're having to, for instance, for soccer, we can only go to one other sport to another conference. So because soccer is so important to us, we're in a different conference for soccer. So I think there's a lot to talk about. The biggest challenge with the Lone Star Conference is that we do not have enough teams in it. That being said, we are possibly close to attracting 2 more teams. If we can attract 2 more football playing teams, we'll be in good shape, but we need to watch the other sports. So my answer is that the biggest challenge to me with any conference in Texas is the amount of travel we have to engage in. Our students are on the road, when they go down to the south of Texas or they go to Colorado, they're not flying, they're not on a jet, they're on a bus, and they're away a long time. And so that means for scheduling, you try to schedule several, if you're going to Colorado, can you play 2 teams there? And that takes students away from class a lot. So I'd say proximity is possibly the greatest challenge we face. And there might be ways to get competitive teams and put ourselves in more of a national spotlight by reconfiguring, but I don't know enough about it yet. It's a difficult thing to do because the NCAA takes you out of competition for a year, and you have a lot of hoops to jump through if you change your conference, and it's expensive because you pay a fee for leaving and disbanding and another fee for setting up. So, long answer to a short question.
I think it's a question that we're going to have to deal with. We kind of talked about that. And, the good news behind Midwestern is that we have a phenomenal athletic program. We have a lot to be proud of. We're fantastic student athletes. So that's a great position to be in. Like all y'all know, my frustrations with the Big 12. And so I just want to get in that position. I know you guys are looking at it.
And we had a tough year this year in that we went a month without a home game.
Mm-hmm.
We're having real trouble with scheduling. And next year, Charlie's not been able to find a school to play us to give us a full schedule with Permian Basin leaving and Oklahoma Panhandle
Yep.
leaving. We're short.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't stay competitive if we don't play enough games.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have to travel up close to Canada to play a football game so you can have enough football, it's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Dr. Shipley?
Regard to item C of the council of presidents meeting you attended, and the new president and possible change he might make in immigration laws or whatever. I think it's far too early to say very much, but did they talk at all about what the exposure might be for university funding? I mean, we have a number of students. Did they talk about what the impacts might be of that?
No, they talked about Hillary winning the election. So they didn't even imagine it. I mean, this was the Beltway. It was a Beltway mentality, and the people in the room from our part of the country were trying to say, this is not as obvious as you are assuming it was obvious. So all of their comments were around what will happen when Clinton wins the election. And there was very little talk about if Donald Trump won the election. So what I'm speaking of with the immigration pieces is what's emerging right now on higher ed media. And that's the fact that he may deregulate, affordable health care and other things. Those will all trickle into higher ed. The whole thing we talked about yesterday with the Fair Labor Standards Act, that was a very much a presidentially controlled decision that was not legislated at all. It was merely passed down so that could be unraveled. So we'll find out in the next year what gets unraveled. And it won't all be bad. Some of it will be great. We just don't know. It's a mix.
It is a mix, but none of it seems like we would have a net gain in enrollment through any of these things. So I am concerned about
That's true.
an
It's gonna
enrollment
be-
hit
You're right.
that we're unprepared for. I don't know how to prepare for it. It's just
Right.
a comment.
Right. So, for example, if we, most the time higher ed legislation takes a long time. But if we lost Pell funding, that would be a real blow. And that's where you need a diversified portfolio, because Pell funding is primarily for a full-time undergraduate. And if you have an adult population or you have an online population, it's going to be less affected by it. So
Probably too early, but
It's too early.
perhaps a committee in the university that looks at those changes and gives us a heads up might. I'm just talking rather than
the
recommending.
cabinet really should be doing that, if that's okay with you. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Anybody else for Dr. Shipley? Well, all right. Then that concludes our business today. You will soon be hearing from Debbie inviting you to participate in graduation in December. If you have not had an opportunity to do so, I'd encourage you to do that. Our guest speaker will be Representative James Frank. Fun time. So, other than that, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, if I could, before the Dallas contingent, if I could keep you guys for 10 minutes, just to.
And Jeff.
And Jeff.
And not Sean.
Sean can't stay if he wants to.
We can only do 4.
The Dallas continue.
Dallas Fort Worth.
Well, Dallas Fort Worth. Oh, sorry. The Metro.
The Metro. The Texas Tech alums. How's that?
Oh. I'm just sitting here awestruck that he's 30 minutes, your first. God.
He knows how to do it.
Wow.
What about that other guy?
Other guy.
Gosh, I feel so honored to be part of the Dallas contingent.
Yeah. When you feel like it, like you tell my